thank you so much for joining us. We wanted to turn our attention to likely the top story of the day about a U.S. airman that was shot and killed by police late last week. Of course, Roger Fuk'n, a 23-year-old. Of course, we're also learning more information about the body cam footage that was recently released by Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office. I do want to play this video out for you here on Live Now from Fox as we get more understanding into what happened, more reaction from people. But of course, viewer discretion is advised for this. Let's listen in and watch this body cam footage.
All this other stuff, and I heard a slap, like right after it, but I wasn't sure where it came from. Okay. And I couldn't call, like I didn't want to call the police, and like, you know.
Which room is it?
1401.
1401. Okay.
1401. But the girl sounded scared, the one that called. She said, she was like, it's getting out of, it sounds like it's getting really out of hand.
So it's hit number 4, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. You do me a favor, we stand out there and direct the other deputy that's coming to this area?
It's not, you're going to go up to the 4th floor and it's going to be on this side.
Gotcha. Three 12 to 111. Sheriff's office, open the door! Sheriff's office, open the door! Step out. Drop the gun! Drop the gun! He's over there. Drop the gun! I don't have it.
All right, that was some very disturbing images there of this body cam footage that was released. And I did want to show you that in full context, just how quickly it all went down last Friday afternoon. Of course, they were talking about a deputy responding to a call of a disturbance in progress, quote, reacted in self-defense after he encountered a 23-year-old man armed with a gun. I also want to put up this statement here on Live Now from Fox from the Okaloosa County Sheriff talking about all of us at the Sheriff's Office saddened about the fatal officer-involved shooting over the weekend. Late Friday afternoon, our deputy responded to a call of a disturbance in progress where he encountered an armed man. The deputy shot the man who later succumbed to his injuries. I immediately placed the deputy on administrative leave and have asked the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to conduct the investigation that is required in such incidents. The state attorney's office will also conduct an independent review. At this time, we humbly ask for our community's patience as we work to determine the facts that resulted in this tragic event. I do want to bring into the conversation right now here on Live Now from Fox, civil rights attorney Benjamin Taylor. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And of course, potentially the first time you're seeing that body cam video like so many of us are. What's our initial reaction? What's our initial thoughts when you look at that video?
I mean, when you watch the video, you see a young man, a U.S. airman inside his house. You see the sheriff deputy knock on the door. So it makes you wonder what caused the sheriff deputy to shoot so quickly. You do see the young man allegedly have a gun in his hand, but the gun is pointing down. So more facts will come out, but the body camera for this case is the main thing here. The knock on the door was very quickly. Yep. The shots were very quickly. So whenever you're inside your house, your home is your castle. And everybody understands that. And people should be protected and feel safe inside their home. And this U.S. Airman would probably assume, would not even know who this person is outside unless they announce that they're law enforcement. So the facts here are going to come down to whether or not the law enforcement agent had the ability and the right to be able to hold the gun out and shoot him, and whether the U.S. Airman inside his house had the right to have a gun inside his house to protect himself too.
Yeah, and of course his family has come out and said he illegally owned that gun. And of course, 23-year-old U.S. Airman serving there in the Air Force as well. And we were talking about some of the statements coming out from Ben Crump, the civil rights attorney as well, talking about potentially the wrong apartment, even though the leasing agent did say 1401. And you can see in that body cam footage that they are at apartment 1401. I do have to ask you, because it's a singular officer. It's one person there going up to this disturbance. We don't really hear a ton of commotion, not really a disturbance at all. Potentially, why did the officer not wait for backup? Is that a component of this?
Yes. I mean, the whole case will be look at the totality of the circumstances, meaning like, was anybody else in the apartment? If there was an alleged fight inside the apartment, but there's nobody else inside the apartment when the officer arrives, what's the sense of urgency to not wait for backup and to, pretty much knock on the door and pull the trigger and shoot? So all the facts have to come out, of course, but the fact that if nobody else is in the apartment and this young airman lives there and rightfully lives there, is there a sense of urgency not to wait for other backup just to come to make sure that everybody's safe before you go into somebody's house? Because anybody would know that if somebody knocks on your door, you're gonna be a little bit suspicious, right? And you don't know who is outside, so you might grab your weapon just to protect yourself. So if the U.S. Airman had every right to grab his weapon, that's fine. But did the officer have a right to actually shoot the U.S. Airman inside his apartment? And that's what the case is going to come down to.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about this because he knocked on the door the first time, didn't really announce himself, may not have felt like he needed to. The second and third time, he did say sheriff's office as well. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that is a component as well? That could be a factor.
Yeah, it's going to be a factor whether or not the airman knew that this was a sheriff's officer. Unfortunately, the airman is dead, so he can't testify anymore. But if there's any other witnesses that heard him say that or heard it on the body camera to say, I am law enforcement, let me in. Even though they're law enforcement, they're outside the door, did this law enforcement have a warrant to enter? Did they have the right to go inside the house? It looks like he might have shot him outside the apartment, not going inside, but still, when your home is your castle, and you have every right to be safe inside your house. So it's a higher level when law enforcement comes inside your house and shoots you versus outside on the streets.
Yeah, and I do want to ask you about another kind of fact of this case. Of course, the 23-year-old U.S. Airman there serving as well. I want to put up just his image as well. As the Air Force's first Special Operations Wing said, his priorities are providing casualty affairs to the family, supporting the squadron during this very tragic time. Will the U.S. government, will the Air Force, they be involved in this investigation at all since it's involving one of their personnel?
Yes, anytime something happens to a United States official, whether or not it's an airman, a post office official, any federal government official, the United States Air Force, United States government, the Department of Justice can always come in and do their own investigation to make sure that everything is done fairly and accurately and correctly. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Department of Justice comes in to help out the state of Florida in this investigation. Yeah,
and the state of Florida is another part that I want to get into because the states have different laws and regulations. Florida's very strong on their maybe castle doctrine and other things like that. How can that play a role in terms of gun ownership, in terms of having your home and being inside your home versus another state or different states?
Yes, Florida has the strong stand your ground laws, and your home is your castle, meaning that if you're inside your house, you have a right to protect yourself from any intruders or anybody who's coming into your house that you don't know. In this situation, the U.S. Airman might not have known that this person was law enforcement, might not even heard the announcement of law enforcement if the law enforcement agent did say, I am law enforcement. So all that will come into play here, but being inside your house will be a big issue. Him being inside his apartment complex, being shot inside of the apartment complex, it will become a big issue in the criminal investigation. Right now, this officer will be criminally investigated to see whether or not charges will be brought against him as far as manslaughter or murder case in the future, whether or not this officer will have to face trial.
Yeah, and potentially what charges, if they do file, what kind of charges are this officer, could they be looking at?
I mean, there's a plethora of charges. Assault, first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter. All types of murder charges could be faced against this officer, because anytime you kill a person, even if it's by accident or a negligent homicide to be a case, that means you negligently shot your weapon and killed somebody. So all of those are on the board and the table for the prosecutor prosecuting this officer in the future if they find out they want to move forward with this case.
Yeah, and the Okaloosa sheriff, they were talking about how they want accountability, potentially justice, and they're going to look into this, investigate it fairly coming up. And I do want to ask you, because sometimes we see a lot of these incidents happen around the country, and it brings back memories, some tragic memories, some traumatic memories as well. For you, does that, and kind of what are we looking at there in a maybe larger picture outside of just this incident, outside of what's going on in this country?
I mean, people might remember Breonna Taylor a couple of years ago. Breonna Taylor was a young woman who was shot inside her house in Kentucky. So this kind of brings back memory. And in Dallas, there was a young man a couple of years ago shot by an officer inside the apartment complex. So a lot of this this brings back memories of other cases where people are being shot inside their house. When you're inside your home, you have every right to protect yourself and to feel safe. So law enforcement definitely has to use a higher level of scrutiny and be very careful when entering or knocking on somebody's door, especially if they don't really know all the facts. Here, we're still trying to learn, was there another person in there? Was there a disturbance? What's the urgency to go there? There's no urgency to go there. There's nobody else in the apartment. The officer should have waited for backup here.
Yeah, and my last question, I kind of forgot to ask it a little bit earlier on, but he was reportedly on the phone on a FaceTime with his girlfriend there. Of course, she was not at the press conference earlier as she wasn't in the right state of mind to be there, and you can imagine so. Is that something that police can use? Is that potentially a witness, even though it is over the phone?
Oh, yes. The FaceTime girlfriend, if she heard everything and she was with him and she actually saw him being shot or heard the gunshots or heard anything, she can come into court and testify and give a statement to the investigator. And if it goes to trial, she can come to trial and testify in front of the jury.
And again, these criminals on paid salaries are committing murder. This one, along with the others, will be gone over with a find any reason to make this black man look as though he deserved to be shot and killed. Now, although this was a gun that looked like a gun, it also looked like a situation where an upstanding citizen standing in their own home is legally able to act according to the way he was acting. Someone knocks on your door. You look out the peephole and no one's there. You get your weapon because you don't know what the fuck is going on. Another knock. And this time they announce that they are the sheriff's department. Oh, okay. You open the door with your weapon pointed down and your other hand up. You're told to step back and then you're shot 5 times. Dear investigation team, look into this young black man's recent past. Look into his childhood. Look into his future. Find something, anything, to justify this decent, murderous man in blue's reason for killing this young black man. Do not focus on the fact that he served this country. Do not focus on the fact that he was only 23 years old and doing the right things in life and not guilty of being involved with what actually had him murdered. Do not focus on the fact that he more than likely owned the gun he was holding, had a permit for it, legally has the right to protect himself in his own home, and was still murdered with all of that being the case. And absolutely do not focus on the fact that this particular cop actually hid from view after knocking the first time. Shot this black man immediately, even though his weapon was lowered and his other hand was up while he was standing in his own home, legally able to do what he was doing. As those who unconditionally stand with those in blue, your job is to now find a way to justify this murder. That's it. Focus on nothing else. Sincerely, the justice system.